Hello and welcome to Oscilloscope. My name is Ed Wright, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce my co-host over there, Ben Buck, who's with us this month. Welcome, Ben. How are you?
Good. How are you, Ed?
I'm very good, thank you. Yeah. It's very kind of you to step in. We were initially supposed to be joined by Lee Green, who many people who followed this will be aware of her and her work, but sadly she's got other quite pressing commitments. So Ben has kindly agreed to step in at the last minute, and it's great to have the opportunity to have you back with us. So yeah, thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Ed.
How's the weather over in Canada for you?
Today it's sunny, about 19.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, we're doing
that's
quite well.
that's ace. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
it's in which case, thank you even more so for giving up a nice afternoon to come and join us. Yeah, it gives me great pleasure to say that we've got an evening of experimental electronic music coming up. Not only on here on Facebook, where some of you may be watching, but we're now also going out onto YouTube. So some of you may be watching out there. This is partly because more platforms and more places for people to listen, and also the fact that Facebook is starting to be a bit weird about streaming and music. So yeah, diversifying just in case. So covering all bases. So if you want to join us on YouTube, if you are already on Facebook, there's watch videos somewhere on the banner, and you can click there, and hopefully we'll get a proper thing set up on YouTube as and when, so that it's easy to find people. But yeah, coming up this evening, we have music from Frood. We have Mark Albro, we have Etch a Sketch, we have Steve Gisby, and we have Daniel Hignell. We were also, if you, for the eagle-eyed amongst you, may have noticed on the billing there was Andrew Hooker as well. We've just got such a packed show, and he's had so many commitments that he's going to join us next month. And yeah, that'd be great. So yeah, apologies if you tuned in specially, but please stay because there's so much other really cool stuff. So yeah, Ben, I've talked for ages. Anything you can think of that I've forgotten or have not said, or
Well, thanks, Ed. Thanks again for inviting me to co-host.
oh, it's a pleasure.
You're my hero. You put together these great shows. So thanks very much. I've enjoyed them, every digital one. So I'm looking forward to tonight quite a bit.
That's really cool. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, I think that probably raises as well the fact that in saying that I put all these together, it's clearly not just me. Behind the scenes, we have Charles and Rob who are looking after all these things, and Sarah who tries to keep us all roughly solvent, and all sorts of friends and family and people who support things. So yeah, that's really cool. So without further introspection, let us jump straight in. We have a piece by Frood, Glyn Roberts, and yeah, lots of wonderful modular synth out there-ness. So we're going to have a chat with Glyn afterwards. Yeah, jumping straight in, Frood, everybody. Well done, Glyn. That was fantastic.
Well,
I'm glad you liked it.
Round of applause for Frood, I should say, rather than Glyn, because yeah, obviously if you're going as Frood, but yes, well done, Glyn. What an amazing piece.
Well, yeah, it was just I'd got a couple of new modules recently, and I wanted to try them out, and also getting myself familiar with some of the old modules I got. But there was a lot of use there of the Slappy Engineering 100 grit. I'm a big fan of the Slappy Engineering stuff. It's very, very distorted, and it's very hands-on. With it's got 8 contact points on the top where you can it short circuits the inside. It's great.
No, that's really cool. I mean, what I was wondering as you're going through there, and without wanting to get too geeky about tech, because I so easily can, yeah, was there any kind of specific plan or structure to what you were doing? Did you have places you were anticipating going, or is this totally improvised, or a fixed piece? Or
it was more improvised than fixed piece. I had a bit of a few bashes earlier in the day, but I knew that the deadline was looming because I've been quite tied up. I've been actually working over the last few months. So yes, because I'm a videographer.
Congratulations to you. Yes.
Yes, I'm a videographer, so I'm experimenting more with video content. So I'm working on. I just finished something now for the Shining Pyramid. I just finished that this afternoon.
So this is David Roberts.
That's it.
Down in Aberystwyth, yeah.
Yeah, so I've put together some video, and I've finished editing it today because I wanted to get that out of the way. But yeah, as to improvise, I knew there were chunks I wanted to do. I wanted to use the Slappy Engineering 100 grit and the ALM MCO. So they're working together. That was quite something I wanted to use, because when you twirl the knobs opposite, it really works. It really goes wild. Then I also wanted to make use of. When I moved into the house 8 years ago, there was a burglar alarm piezo on the garage door which was broken, but I wired the piezo buzzer as an input into the Doppler. So I used that as a piezo, and I did have a toothbrush. So I do like using toothbrushes to vibrate. So I've got quite a collection of toothbrushes by now. Yes, a lot of them don't work, but anyway, I did use my toothbrush there, and that was going into the DLD, the dual looping delay. I still haven't got my head around that properly. But yes, that was a bit of fun. But so I knew I wanted to use the electric toothbrush, and what else? I wanted to use my Vesta Casa old analog delay unit. That didn't perform as I expected, because because it's analog. I think it should be called more organic than analog, because it's always behaving differently every time I do it. Anyway, so I wanted to use that, and then so it was improvised, but there were blocks of bits I wanted to use throughout. And what I'm noticing is I do this all the time. I don't like having a regular beat. I like having the arpeggiated or machine rhythm, but I like to slow it down and speed it up. And that's why I was using the Dope for Dark Time as the master clock, because you can play about with that quite a bit. So I do like messing about with time signatures, and I also like the way that the polyrhythms work at different speeds. So I've got a module coming later this week where I'll be able to do a bit more polyrhythms and stick my Tip Top Audio One. I've got 4 of them, and they'll be going, and then get them triggered from the Batumi LFO. Anyway, so yeah, I do like my modular, but yeah. So
We'd noticed.
Yes, yes. No, it's sort of yeah, and it's always different. You know, sort of you plug things in different ways, and you really after a while you realize which modules work really well and which sort of go by the wayside. You know, you read the reviews with sort of the top 10 modules you have to have. Well, I've got 2 of the top 10, and they're not doing it for me. You know, the Make Noise Rennie sequencer, I can't get my head on that. And the Duranalog filter 8, well, it's okay, but not as nice as I've got the Verbos. I got a Verbos filter, which is fantastic, and that is very organic. I really like the sort of,
cool.
But it's a lot more gentle than my usual stuff. So when the track was a bit gentle in the middle, that was when it was going through the Verbos, because the Verbos helps me to not calm the voices in my head, but it helps me. It helps to slow things down a bit, because it's a beautiful module, but it only works with sort of gentle sounds, and so I think that's good for me to have a bit of gentleness at some parts, but most parts I like it all pumping and loud and yeah.
Cool.
Ben, you look like you've been writing some notes there at some point, or
always notes. How much time do I have to give you praise? Really, is really.
Oh, thank you.
I could watch you do that all day.
That's very kind.
Yeah, no, really. I mean, it's funny that you talk a lot about the tech and the gear, and that's great, and it's very interesting. But when I'm watching, I'm fascinated by your personal reaction to what you're doing. It's fascinating. I love how sometimes it looks like you're a scientist working equipment, and then all of a sudden you're like a DJ who dropped a beat and you're dancing, and it all works all the time as you're playing your instrument. So there's this great symbiotic relationship between you, the performer, and this equipment and the sound. It fits perfectly. And that's what I mean by it's just pleasurable to watch. Sometimes, we watch a lot of gear. We watch a lot of people using their gear. I just find with you particularly, your energy with your gear is something special. It's really enjoyable to watch. So thank you for that. That was really good. I always enjoy it. So the sort of my question did lean into like the sort of premeditated part then, but less with like what equipment you'd like to do. But like, do you go in with a feeling? Do you go in with like you just said, you like a lot of big noises, but you have some things that draw you in. But when you're playing in the moment, are you drawn anywhere, or do you sort of stick within your wheelhouse when you're doing your thing?
Oh, right. That's a good question. I'm sort of I spend a lot of time sort of just figuring out what works best and how things plug together. But it is there's a phrase in Welsh, "hap damwen," which is, I'm trying to think what it is in English. It's like sort of chance. It's chance. I do like chance, and I like, and then because the name Ffrwd, it's Welsh for stream. And the thing I do is is a stream of consciousness. So every time it's always a bit different. But sort of I like when you mentioned that sort of I move. I do like moving around a bit, but I did notice. So when I'm going like this, that's what I'm thinking. Sort of, and I'm thinking, right, which one am I plugging in next? And sort of. But the more practice I get, the better I know of plugging it into the right thing. But sort of a lot of the modules I've got, especially, well, I'll go back to the Slappy engineering one, because that's got more than one input, and then sort of it cross modulates a lot of the sounds, which I really like. I didn't really go into it that deep with this track, this performance, but the way it sort of it just takes things in. And when I saw the module when I was in Elevator Sound in Bristol, I went there to get the miasma ritual electronics miasma. I want to buy that, and then but Ben in Elevator Sound said, "Hold on, do you want to try this?" And then when I had a go on that Slappy, oh my god, it blew my mind. I sort of like, got it straight away. Anyway, back to your sort of things. Sort of, I do have some sort of plans with what I do, but sort of it is a bit of an organic thing. And then because the nature of modular synths is you can change one wire and it just changes the timbre, the feeling so much by just doing a little tweak. And then obviously you might have a fantastic sound, but you go back to it and you never have the same sound ever again, which sort of it's sort of quite nice, but not sad, but sort of
You can't get too attached.
It's not worth shedding a tear about, is it? But yeah, sort of. But yeah, and I do like moving about a bit because when I started performing as Frood about 4 years ago now, but I've been in bands long time because I'm a bit of a keyboard player. I wish I did use the keyboard a bit more. However, the gig it was a laptop and Ableton controller, and I felt, oh no. I felt a bit restrained. So when I perform, when I do so, when I have been doing stuff live, I go into the audience and stuff with my not bells, but well, I've got a cowbell and stuff, and I just like going into the audience to sort of be a bit more physical, and then make sounds.
I very much, cool. Yeah, I very much enjoy that part of your performance. Again, thank you. Yeah, the physical and the movement.
Well, I've had really good feedback about that. So sort of yeah, I do yeah, I do like I like doing it. I like sort of just moving, and I think sort of I respond to the music, and it sort of I feel sort of really connected to the music by sort of letting my body move to the sounds. It's kind of sort of I feel the music that much more. Because I do have sort of with some you know, some songs I do get goosebumps if I hear it on the radio, because I do have a very profound reaction to some music. So yeah, because I've been sort of playing the piano for 50 years plus, so yeah, a little bit of music, and but I also like making noise. Big noise.
Oh yes. As promised, there's a few questions come through on the comments, so I think just very quickly, because we are running a little bit short on time, which is kind of cool. Because yeah, one from Reese Evans. When you create music or sound, where do you see it ending up? Does it have to end up anywhere, or is it about the act of experimenting and making unique sounds? Wow, unpack that one. Off you go. We give you 2 minutes starting.
2 minutes.
Okay, I'll give you 2 minutes. So, I used to be a sound engineer in the BBC, and I really liked. I was a tape op and start cutting up tape and stuff. You know, that's where the fast forward rewind comes in, because I did 1/4-inch tape. Anyway, I like the process of making sounds. That's the most important thing for me, is actually making the sounds. I've got a diary here, 2020 diary, and one of the first things I put as a to-do list was put stuff on Bandcamp. I still haven't put stuff on Bandcamp. I do put stuff on SoundCloud now and again. I know. I do need to sort of not just be in a studio just making the sounds. It does need to go somewhere. So it's a good point, Chris. I think I should do something more than just making the sounds, and then, you know, but it's really good doing the sounds for you guys to listen, to hear it and everything. So, and it's the kind words I'm having, it sort of just makes me think, all right, I must sort of fine tune it and then put it on Bandcamp, and because I do have lots of different pieces which just need to go, really, and I haven't got many excuses. But I have been busy recently, but this week now it's nice and calm, so I do have time to sort of get my arse in gear and get some music. But yeah, so I will take what she's said, and I will act upon it.
Cool.
Good. That's great. We'll look forward to that. We'll get some links when you do that. Send some links on.
Okay.
To the channels, please. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good thing. And this thing, I'm really because I've done about 4 oscilloscopes now, and it's really good. So having that sort of like an event to do stuff. I love it. Great.
It's really nice for that, isn't it? I thoroughly enjoy it for that aspect. That you kind of, because it is a monthly thing. I mean, especially for people who might not have watched before. Being a sort of monthly event that has been running now for 4 and a bit years in one incarnation or another. You can kind of put a target in your head and go, right, I can't put something together for this month, but maybe next month or 2 months down the line, I will have something ready to go there. And you can kind of, build towards something, which is really quite cool.
Yeah, you can't beat a deadline. I love it. I love a deadline.
Oh, that's brilliant. So yeah, in which case, thank you very, very much, Glyn.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
It's been a massive joy having you here again, and thank you so much for a fantastic piece and joining us.
Well, great. We'll do it again, and thanks for organising, Ed. Good.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Nice to meet you, Ben.
Oh, that was immensely enjoyable and very nice, actually, to start off with a bang.
Absolutely.
I think we all kind of get into experimental and artistic and creative things, and it's very easy to be quite quiet and thoughtful, which sometimes starting off on a nice noisy high note is definitely called for, especially in these times.
Absolutely.
So coming up, we have another returning artist to Oscilloscope. This time we have Mark Albro, who has got a kind of triptych of 3 short audio-visual pieces. Is coming on to have a chat about them afterwards. So I will not say too much and steal his thunder. Suffice it to say, though, there's 3 pieces, all about between 3 and 5 minutes long, entitled, first one, Steam Hammer. The second one is called Chatter. And the third one is called Face Mask, which sounds like suitable for these times. And Ben's dutifully writing them down. I really should have shared this with you beforehand. Sorry. So without further ado, I guess, unless you've got anything else you want to bring to this, Ben, that I've overlooked.
I'm ready. I'm committed. Let's do it.
Okay, it's pretty committed. Let's go. So without further ado, Mark Albro.
I hated that because of what you did to our community. They've been brought up to be selfish. Their children are becoming selfish. No respect for elderly, no respect for anybody. It just, you know, and she's created that society.
I'm looking forward to that. They were young, they were older. They were black, they were white, they were everything. They were the microcosm of what is the unity of those people that want to see democracy. Decency. A fairer and better society.
And death and death shall have no dominion.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Mark. Yeah, apologies. I think I might have introduced those in the wrong order.
Yes, that's all right. That's fine. It makes you know, the chatter is the one with the text in it, so I think it's sort of
Yes, yeah. Please tell us about them. I deliberately didn't steal your thunder from what you wrote about. So.
Thunder. Have I got any thunder?
Yes, bring the thunder,
I
Mark.
don't know. It felt like a bit of a massive contrast compared to Glenn's, I must say. After
That's
the
nice. Yeah.
invigoration of Glenn's piece, it sort of just thought, oh dear.
No. It's
Follow-up act. It's hard.
absolutely. You know, it's two totally different things, and it's two wonderfully different things. I mean, so yeah.
Well, the first one, the one I called Steam Hammer, was basically because there was a steam hammer in Sheffield that my friend Nort and I recorded many moons ago, and I'd slow down a rhythm, which I'd done on two of the pieces out of those three, Face Mask and Steam Hammer, and that sounded just like the Steam Hammer, the slowed down rhythm, which was a bit like a breath, but not really. That was a sort of slowish rhythm. and then there was a kind of loop of some slightly melancholy tones and notes in there, which were also slowed down, and then some tones on top of that. So yeah, I've kind of got this tendency for the melancholy, I suppose, the reflective. So that's, I just like the feel of that piece, even though it was a bit, yeah, as I say, it was a bit melancholy and a bit sparse. It was just the way the tones and the notes just floated above that that sort of steam hammer sound going on, and the contrast with sort of the feel of the sound and the prettiness of the visual, if you like. Plus the visual was reasonably hypnotic, I thought. So
Absolutely.
that's why I put those two pieces together. And as usual, it's just really following my nose. I just try things out and see if they elicit. Again, Glyn was talking about this, you know, some pieces of sound or music or whatever elicits such an amazing response. You know, the positive, negative, whatever. But if it's moving you, then it's doing something, and it's at the same time, it's the most sort of abstract of the arts, but it's also the most immediate because of that, which is constantly fascinating in itself. So that was what that was about, really. There's nothing else, I don't think, to do with that. The second one, the face mask one that came up there, similar approach to Steamhammer, as you could tell, but again, because the rhythm was more like a breath, that's why I thought, and also it was quite claustrophobic again, so it wasn't that cheerful. That's why I called it face mask. So and the visual as well, I thought was very, because it's not giving much away, sort of echoed that the feel of the music, which was a little bit, yeah, it was a little bit claustrophobic and maybe tending towards this sort of horror thing, if you like. Unintentionally, I have to say, but again, yeah, it was just the feel of that, and the fact that it did seem to be, you know, it suggested to me the breathing of, not necessarily with the anti-lurgy masks, but you know, working masks when you're having to breathe to stop the dust from getting in your lungs, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And the third one that came up, Chatter, that was a load of voices put through a noise gate, triggered by a rhythm. That was the general sound to it, and then I just dropped in some bits of speech, which I had from well, the first bit was just a bit of fun, and the other pieces were contrasting some pieces from a documentary about Easington town, made some years ago, and some bits from a Jeremy Corbyn speech that I recorded at the George Hotel in Llandudno 4 years ago, or whatever it was. Again, doesn't have to be intrinsically political, but in the end, it's just general principles, really. It's not supposed to be divisive, and I'm not sure whether dropping things like that in is. You have to tell me if that's appropriate in this.
I don't think it's. I think the craziness of the moment, it's impossible not to have an opinion about things. So I think, you know what, everybody is entitled to their viewpoints, especially when they're not being stupid about them. So by all means, you know.
Especially using creativity to
yeah, absolutely,
is a little different than shouting on Twitter or something, right? So
yeah,
you know, that's what it's there for, is to express some of these things, for sure.
And I mean, we all essentially, I mean, that's the sometimes the wonder and the difficulty of art, that essentially you are on some level communicating from yourself to other people. So irrespective of what you're doing, there will be some political element, whether that's only your own preconceptions or prejudices or whatever, whether that's subconscious or whether it's campaigning level. But
Hmm.
having some kind of awareness that we're all inside that field, whether consciously or not, is I don't think that can be a bad thing. So yeah.
Thank you
So,
for that.
can I-
Go on.
No, I wanted to know then, are these three pieces meant to be connected to each other, or are they separate pieces?
No, they weren't. They weren't sort of conceived as being connected to each other, but obviously, on reflection, two of them have very, very similar sounds going on in them, and very, very similar feels. With the last one, Chatter, being quite a contrast. And I was going to say that I finished off using the Dylan Thomas quote just to put all that in trying to put that into perspective, insofar as to try and back up what Ed was just saying, that these are weird times, and yeah.
Yeah, you get this sense of journey, and certainly like that's going to happen when you combine multiple elements, right? The brain's going to put them together anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
So you're going to start to make connections, and I did feel myself very much on a journey, especially with the first two pieces, sort of giving you that what I call the beautiful anxiety feeling. You know?
Yes, I've not heard it described as that, but I know
Yeah.
exactly what you mean.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we get to the last piece and it kind of reverses a little bit. Like you kind of let go. The music sort of gets playful a bit, and you're left with a little release. And then you get the context, the actual words, which have, as we all agree, like in sound, have a very distinct meaning, right? When you start adding words, especially language. So, I do feel like you did build towards something, even if it wasn't altogether conscious. By putting them together, they do sort of have a linear trajectory to me.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's
And-
great.
Yeah, and it was certainly like I think each piece on its own has its own merits, but I definitely felt like the first and the last two pieces were very much bookends to something.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Really interesting. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
If it was your
Enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting too, because a lot of times, like you say, it's not intent, right? But when, if you're making something in a certain period, or you're reflecting on the same thing as you make it, it's like we're saying that politics, that whatever's driving it may not be the conscious thing, but it does come through in the work. It felt very timely. It felt like it belonged in this time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was very successful like that.
great.
So
Thank
yeah, and the pace of it is great. We can't always, come out with a bang. So I love all that melancholy stuff. I love all that, I love all that laid back, take your time on the laid river stuff. So it's great. Yeah.
I like rhythm as well, but I seem to be doing putting the more slow, melancholy things forward for this for some reason. But there we are. As I said, Glyn's been inspirational, so I think I'll have to.
Yeah, no, I think it's
rhythmic
actually
stuff
worked
going
out as a lovely contrast.
Well, it's keeping your show diverse, right? But well done.
Absolutely. It's one of the joys of doing this sort of thing. All of a sudden, you kind of find there's the opportunity to put different things together, and all of a sudden, it shows up the differences, and actually, you can revel in the fact that these two things are so kind of different and have such amazing qualities to them that you kind of wouldn't normally get if you had just a load of full-on out there stuff, and then after a while you kind of, that becomes the level that you're at. Or if you're just solely beautifully introspective, then that becomes the norm as well. So if you can kind of go between these and revel in some of these extremes and some of those spaces within that, that's lovely.
Yeah, that's great. I agree.
Thank you for it. It's a
thank you.
great little set of pieces. And just looking at the comments, there's some wonderful things people have been saying about it as well. I don't know if you've seen them ticking past, but yeah, David Hopewell, I enjoyed
yes,
those pieces
It's
and
very nice of David.
clapping hands and
I love his work.
and Telecom boring, great stuff. Really enjoyed that. Oh, Yuan, okay.
Thank you, Johan.
I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce that one.
You
But
practice.
yes, but they say it's beautiful. So that's
that's great. Thank you.
I would definitely second that. So yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen. That's brilliant.
Thank you very, very much, Mark.
Well, thank
Cool.
you.
Thank you.
Look forward to the rest of the show.
Yeah, you know, come, sit back and enjoy, and yes, open a fresh cup of tea or whatever it is that you're doing. Brilliant. So yeah, Mark Albro, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, wonderful kind of diversity of things. So just before we move on, I would just very quickly say we're all doing this purely for the fun of it and because it's a cool thing to do. And we were doing this in the real world before we got locked down. And well, we didn't have the benefit of Ben with us then because it's kind of a bit of a commute from Canada to North Wales. So it's quite nice doing this digitally. But yeah, so we're all still doing this. However, there are some overheads, so you do have the opportunity to drop a few pennies in the hat. We are on coffee.com/oscilloscope, whereby you can literally go and buy us coffee if you want. Just sort of literally it covers the costs of streaming and what have you. And sooner or later people's computers will break or what have you. If you can't afford it, please don't. There is absolutely no obligation. But if you can, it helps to pay streaming fees and keep everything going and keep the caffeine wheels turning and all those sort of things.
So, vital fuels, yes.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's quite enough of that because it always feels really awkward and I hate doing this bit. But it does make a big difference. And for those of you who have already donated, we've in the last few months we are ahead of ourselves in terms of monthly streaming fees. So thank you so much to those of you who already have. Right, that's quite enough of mercenariness. Next up we have a set by Etch a Sketch, so Rob Dixon, who has been doing stuff for and with us for quite a while. I think he first played for one of the Oscilloscope events when we were based in Club DB in Bangor in North Wales, I think about April 2018, and has since gone on to found Modulate, and some of you may well have been watching those streams going on because kind of running down roughly similar tracks, but Rob tending more towards modular gear, although quite frankly, based on tonight, it looks like we're tending towards modular gear as well, which is kind of cool and quite nice. And it feels like a very kind of natural environment to have Rob doing some stuff in with us. So have you, presumably you've been aware of Rob's work before? And
I have. I think Rob was with the first or the second digital oscilloscope. Rob performed as well, and
yes,
I was witness to that. So I'm looking forward very much to seeing what he brings today.
Absolutely. So without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Rob Dixon, otherwise Etch a Sketch. Etch a Sketch, thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Thanks for
That
having me
was
again.
amazing. Yeah. Where should we start? Ben, do you want to start?
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
go for it.
Thanks very much, Etch a Sketch. Love that piece. One thing I'm going to say is that, like, compared to the other module guys, you know, like the performances, your performance was very, very different, wasn't it? It was very, very subtle. And I felt like there's no way you can't operate these pieces of equipment without having a relationship with the machine. So why don't you tell me your relationship with your machine? Because I felt like there was like almost like a contemplative, meditative process you were going through, as opposed to a reactionary, visceral process. Is that so?
Yeah, so quite a lot of thought had gone into that piece in terms of how it came about, which is quite different for me. I do, I guess some stuff I'll just patch from scratch. Other ones have more of a set patch that I work from. That one was more of a set patch. You could see I wasn't actually patching a huge amount kind of during the actual set. It was more a case of slight tweaks to what I'd got set up. So yeah, I mean, the relationship with the piece is that the video you could see at the top was actually my first ever performance at Oscilloscope, which I had referred to, which was 27th of March 2018, which was my first ever live performance, which was with the little modular setup I had back then. So yeah, and this is a new case that I've kind of got recently, and I guess I was reflecting when I got this case as to where I started, which was with my little box that I brought to modulate, and Ed was kind enough to let me make some noise. And yeah, and I guess the main piece was based around the arbor, which is a granular sampler, and the idea was to take the original piece and kind of play it through the arbor and kind of sample it and add layers to it and gradually evolve from the original performance into something very different. And then I guess finish off back where we started with the original piece again. So yeah, and kind of exploring that relationship with wanting to play live again, but not being able to, because obviously we can't. And Arbor was kind of bought, I mean, it's granular sampler, so it does loads of amazing things, but it's got a built-in contact mic, built-in mic in there. And I always had this idea of doing something like Oscilloscope and sampling the audience and actually incorporating that into the set, so you actually bring your surroundings and everything else into your set. And clearly you can't do that, so it was just a way of thinking differently around that process. And yeah, it came upon me to use an original performance and kind of use it in that way.
I like that you're paying homage to your own performance history, which is great, because I noticed the screen right away. I was like, what's going on with that? That's great. I love that sort of inner meta, sort of inner dialogue you're having with yourself. But then it's great to know that, because I was wondering, okay, is this just a visual reflection, or is that sound coming into the piece? So to know that you're taking what you started with in a concept, but also in the actual sound itself and building onto it, it sort of bow ties it together well. And I think that's it's kind of clever. Well done. Yeah, but also very subtle, also very subtle. And I think, knowing your history behind it makes it the difference, for example.
Yeah. And I guess it's a nod and a wink to what Ed and the guys do with the Oscilloscope, because without them, I probably wouldn't be performing this stuff live or doing this kind of thing. So yeah, it's kind of it's paying your dues back to, I guess, Oscilloscope in a way, which is where it kind of started. And yeah, hopefully we'll all get out there and do this kind of thing live.
Absolutely.
Albeit the virtual world is brilliant, because we get to share it with people like you, Ben, and we've done that with Modulate TV, where we've got folks from the States who are sharing performances.
Yay! Quick, Rob, put the link in for him. He finally got the unsubtle plug-in. But no, I think it's justified.
You had it there and you just blew it.
Yeah.
No, that's good. I've seen some Modulate TV stuff too, and it's really great. So
it's really cool
that you're pushing It's all you can do in these times is just continue to push the material out anyway, right? So.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, like Ed, it's about providing a platform for whatever people feel able to give. And
Yeah.
There's some pretty incredible stuff out there, and it's quite humbling when people send you these performances, and it's like, whoa, where did that come from? And it just being able to put it out is great. So yeah.
No, it's very nice. Yeah, what I was wondering is you've obviously got your original performance there, and you're obviously, it's clear that you're doing something with the modular there. To what extent is that putting new things over the top, or to what extent is it processing what you've already got there, or is it something between the two? Or
it's something between the two. So it starts with the original performance. So what you hear at the start, the opening bars, is just what I played back in March 2018, and then gradually some effects come in that kind of process that sound. And in the arbor, it's kind of got a crossfader in there, so you can crossfade from the sound that's coming in via the mic or the cable, as it was in this case, and then the process sound in arbor, so you can gradually fade between the two. So over time, it kind of goes from being the original performance to entirely what's sampled in granular, and it's got, I think it's 10 seconds, the audio buffer. So I sampled in 10 seconds worth of the performance, and then that was the basis then for the granular sampling that kind of took the middle part of the performance. So everything after about probably 2 minutes or so was arbor, and it was routed a couple of different ways. So you probably saw me using the commander on top. So that was affecting the filter cutoff on the filter 8, and also the grain size in arbor. And then it's going through a few reverbs and effects that give it that big kind of spacey sound.
It does sound huge.
Yeah. But the other cool thing, and I only recently discovered this, is it's kind of got, if you turn the grains all the way down to nothing, it's got, it becomes a wavetable oscillator, and it's got its own inbuilt kind of quantizer. So that kind of melody you heard was entirely generated by arbor, but based on what it had sampled from the original performance. So yeah, that's how it all came together. And the reason I kept looking down to my left, there was no notes there. There was a little clock, because I knew the original video was 17 minutes and 5 seconds, and I was trying to finish exactly on time with the original video. I kept looking down to check where I was, because I wanted to bring the original performance back in to finish it. So that's why I kept glancing over to the left. So and lots of random in there as well. So there's a lot of sample and hold and LFOs in there. So the performance I did the first time, I think you saw, Ben, was I used the OCHD LFO. That's 8 LFOs within one. It's kind of very lovely and evolving and musical, because you've just got one knob which controls the overall rate of everything, but you get all these varying speeds of LFO. And then the random step, that's another DivKid module, is a kind of sample and hold module, so you can just send it one trigger, and then you just get all these lovely random voltages that come out of it. So that was pinging various things in the kind of effects bit of the patch as well. So yeah, lots going on, but kind of most of it's set up in advance for a change. So
so there's the link for your album. I've got a question that's come through from, I think it's EU Fractus again. Have the same question for all participants. What are their platform choices for playing live with other musicians? Because I mean, this feels especially kind of pertinent at this time, especially for those of us who are living in Conwy County or anywhere in North Wales, as we've just been told we're being locked down again. Give some people some news as to what they could have a jam on with people, I guess.
I mean, I guess the platform at the moment is this kind of thing, isn't it? So I do Modulate TV, you do this. There's a couple of the bits and bobs out there, but I think what's nice to see, I think, Ed, is the North Wales scene has kind of taken itself online and global, which is kind of brilliant, really. It's kept kept a platform for performing alive, despite the fact we can't all get together in the same room and do it. So, yeah.
So I think generally, a lot of what you're doing is sort of tends to be kind of solo performance type stuff, doesn't it? And then streaming out.
Yeah, I've not really explored the kind of.
Yeah, I mean, Ben, I know you've done stuff for years streaming with Charles as part of. Yeah,
we've used Ninjam. Ninjam was what we still do use Ninjam, which is. Charles can post there what if it's changed its name because it recently updated or something happened.
Yes, it's down there. It's Jamtaba now.
There it is, Jamtaba,
which is still Ninjam on the inside, but with a nice wrapper that you can drop into VSTs and all sorts of exciting things.
So it's worth exploring if you. I mean, Charles and I have used that for 4 or 5 years since I've been living in Canada and he's been in Wales, and we've been able to perform or play at the same time with that software, so it's worth checking out.
There's the Ninjam original one, but I mean, also, for people who are sort of a bit less tech savvy and things, sometimes just something as simple as Skype or Zoom, can be the way to go just for getting off the ground. It's less than ideal sometimes, but even with Zoom, if you turn on original audio or whatever it is, I can't quite remember right now, but that tends to take out a lot of the sound cancellation. But I'm just trying to dig back through any other questions and see if there were others for Rob. And it's generally people being really nice and complimentary. Okay, are all these sounds entirely synthesized, or is any of it sample based? Which I think some of it's obviously sample based because you've got your original performance there.
But the only sample is the original performance. So there's a couple of layers of that, of kind of 10-second into the audio buffer, but then everything else is just kind of layered on top through the kind of filters and effects and the granular processing engine within Arbor, which is fantastic.
Yeah. And there comes back a response to that. So
I mean, literally, you can. I say you could throw anything into Arbor and create something wonderful with it. Which
don't give the secrets away.
It can sound awful, but I did test it the other day when I was trying to describe to Kate what I was doing. It was to get her to bang a few pots and pans and try and turn it into something audible, and just about managed to pull it off. But I'm not sure I'd play that to an audience just yet. But
I think Oscilloscope will accept it. So
banging pots and pans and running it through something sounds almost exactly where we're at.
Give it a few months, that might be what it's come down to.
That's what I'm proposing next month. So
So when we have a strange influx of culinary based things, we know what's going on.
It's all blaming you, man. We're all blaming you.
No play the spoons, please. But I mean, other than that, I guess
excellent.
Cool. In which case, duet with Glyn's toothbrushes. That's there we are. I think on that cheerful bombshell, should we wrap that up unless anybody's got anything mad and pressing or no?
Happily take any questions. I'll look through the feed, see something on there.
If you dive in and answer those, and that'd be lovely. Thank you so much. So
thanks for having me once again.
It's a pleasure. Rob Dixon, Etch a Sketch. Thank you very, very much. Cool. So it's one of those weird things about doing this sort of thing. It's very nice to can come across work by new and different people, but it's so nice actually seeing the same people come back through different stages and seeing how people develop and what they're doing, and that's really cool.
I think it's really nice to have. I haven't seen all the performances over the years, obviously, but that was like a legacy performance. Someone bringing the past Oscilloscope into the present.
Literally, yes.
And that's great. Like that's a nice homage to what's going on here, and I think that was really like a genuine note to hit. So Yeah, it was
Oh dear.
enjoyable.
Right. Right, before we get too introspective and self-congratulatory, next up we have a piece by Steve Gisby, and a sort of minimalist piece based around some recordings, some NASA recordings. And yeah, I won't talk about it anymore because there is talking in it. And yeah, I hope you enjoy it. It's only quite a short piece. It's about 5 minutes. So please don't dive out, because if you dive out now, you'll probably miss all of it. So without further ado, Steve Gisby.
Computers now have primary control of 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 computers now
Thank you very much, Steve, and yeah, welcome.
Very welcome. Good to see you again.
Yeah, and you. That was really enjoyable. I quite liked. It sort of felt like this process was set up, and then all of a sudden you went, "Yeah, we'll just have some completely different material in there," which was. It felt really quite light-hearted and fun, you know.
You mean the way it ended, or kind of the before?
The way it sort of dropped into the computers bit.
That came about just kind of through experimenting. I think that I got my hands on these NASA kind of voice recordings, and thought, well, both kind of sections, that line about it's one small step, and then the second line of the computers now have primary control. Both those sections use techniques I've used before. And I just kind of like the way with that second phrase of the computers now have primary control, the way that as it gradually layers up, but slightly kind of getting further and further out of phase, you end up with it superimposed on itself 8 times. You end up with this utter indecipherable chaos wall of noise that seemed to me to kind of just fit the implications of the text quite well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's sort of felt like once really kind of quite light-hearted, and also kind of, I don't know, kind of sort of doomer, post-humanism, digital apocalypse kind of Ray Kurzweil nonsense all in one hit, you know, which is quite cool.
That was also kind of in that final line of "it's nice to be in orbit." For me, there was a question about who's in orbit from who. Are we in orbit from the machines? And do we finally untether in orbit in the sense of being untethered? You know, do we finally end up untethered from the machines, or do they end up untethered from us? And the implications of either of those scenarios. So it was kind of, and I quite like the idea of suddenly just dropping the ending off completely dead, and then just that slight few seconds of silence, and then that little kind of slightly distorted, muffled voice.
I strongly agree with you, Ed, that it like feels very playful despite having some of those connotations you mentioned, you know, those like but the way it's combined is quite playful, kind of like, you know, the family Robinsons, you know, the 60s space family. I imagine their robot like frizzing out or something, you know, like a 60s robot, as opposed to, you know, the Terminator kind of technological presence. So and then I think you preserved that because you didn't add anything, and that's what was important. It wasn't, as the chaos grew, it wasn't like, oh, here's the ominous boom or crackle or whatever. You weren't building towards an obvious conclusion. And visually, you just left it as it is. You let the conclusion be that one line at the end, which was very nice. So, yeah, I think it was straightforward, but it was also effective too. You know, like a piece like this, like you don't have a lot of room because it's words, and they have an exact meaning. And you didn't add any visuals to, you know, to lead the audience on. So you kind of left it straight up, and it's great. It's sometimes a strong, stiff drink is what you need once in a while. So,
talking of drinks, by the way, and in honor of my previous visit to Oscilloscope, I'm drinking out of this. That may not mean anything. Hang on, let's get that on shot. There we go.
Oh,
that's the Blue Sky Cafe in Bangor. For anyone that doesn't know,
it is. Yes, absolutely. And
we
they're presumably one mug shorter than they used to be.
No, hang on. Whoa. No. We paid for these. Thank you very much.
Okay.
There's no larceny going on here.
Oh, well done to you. Yeah, that's it's a long time since I've even had the opportunity to go there, it seems, at the moment. Which that's really lovely. Oh yes, and there's the link for it. Should anybody wish to go?
I think Twyla, because you know Twyla, don't you? Twyla Basher.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, well, it was her that suggested Blue Sky Cafe to us. So I think she's now going to be on commission. That the URL suddenly popped up in the chat window as well.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's nice to. Wow, it feels like a proper semi-trip down memory lane this evening. It's lovely.
That's funny.
Sorry, you sounded like you were about to ask something, Ben. You sort of just launched and
I did. I wondered if for you, was it successful? Like for you combining, because it seems when you just described there was more of the context of the words and, you know, this untethered idea, was that successful when you put that piece together? Do you feel that came across, or because it feels like very complete? Let me put it that way. Even though it's simple, it's very complete. So do you feel it complete? Do you feel it's doing what it's meant to do?
For me, yeah, I do. It was kind of, it started out as just an experiment in terms of just using text, using spoken language as kind of audio material, which I've kind of been doing more and more ever since, actually, both in terms of electronic pieces, but also actually kind of pieces for human performers. So it was kind of one of those kind of lucky accidents almost, I think, that said I wanted to experiment and to try out some different ideas, and then stumbled across this audio material, which it just kind of fell into place. So it was kind of quite, the structure wasn't predetermined, not when I set out. There's the two main sections, the opening line, and then the one about the computer being in control. Like I said earlier, it's both techniques I've used before. And it seemed just kind of somewhat kind of serendipitous, I suppose, because the way that first line comes in, the fact that you get it one step at a time. So because it's a technique I'd used before, and when I found that particular line in the NASA recordings, I thought, hey, you know what? I know what I need to do with that bit of text. I need to use that technique because it's telling you what happens. But at the same time, then it's quite an iconic line. That thing, like, it's one small step.
It's very iconic, and that's why I'm asking, because you've picked, even though it's a very simple piece, you've picked super clear, iconic things inside it, and that's okay. So maybe you didn't intend to put it that way, but once you find that piece, there's connotation, there's meaning behind it outside of your work. So that's going to come into your work without your choice, that
of course
comes in, And how did you manage that? Like, you're describing that now, but like, managing that expectation of your audience, because they're going to know where your source is from. And how does that source affect your work now when you brought it in, and change your work?
I don't think it does, in terms of I don't kind of give any consideration in terms of,
like, for example, do you feel like me as a Canadian, like there's an Americanness about it right away because of that line, and so that comes right into the piece, and yet I don't feel like you're representing anything necessarily under an American ideal, or that's sort of not really what you're addressing in your work, right? In that regard, so there are some other. What I'm saying is, there's some other cultural things that are coming into your work. And I'm just wondering if you, like, was that conscious address? Did you consciously address it when you decided how to break the words up, or are you just letting those filter in because it's going to happen anyway?
Very much the latter. I mean, I picked the first line, as I just said, because of the way that it described the technique that I'd used in other pieces previously. The second line, it's that kind of almost like rising semitone, actually, kind of the pitch content gradually kind of just ascends the way it does. So that was more about the musical content of that particular phrase. And then the fact that when you repeat it, it kind of, to begin with, that kind of rising pitch thing starts out, to me anyway, when I was working on it, started out being quite interestingly musical, yet with the kind of just that solid repetition, I found it becoming quite sinister. It started to sound quite threatening, which then kind of fitted again for me with the idea of just superimposing it until you end up with this indecipherable wall of goodness knows what that you can't. It's very easy to tell what's going on. You can hear that it's being layered up out of phrase. But so so I was kind of interested in kind of where the point at which it stops being decipherable language and just ends up being noise, and the implications of that to that line of text, rather than any kind of cultural kind of association of the fact it was NASA or an American voice or anything like that.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Absolutely.
No, it's really intriguing, and it kind of almost fits back fairly neatly into what we kind of touched on with Mark about saying about having politics or things within a piece, and the fact that it's almost impossible in some cases not to. The fact that you just wrote something that clearly had space reference to you, and
Yeah.
was the fact that it was an American was sort of almost by the by, but to somebody from Canada, all of a sudden that has a totally different loaded meaning. So I mean, it's quite intriguing as a sort of dialogue.
I think for me too, the way that kind of the idea of kind of working with language has kind of evolved, and especially with repetition. That there's an interesting question to me. At what point? Because obviously, with the fact it's digital repetition, so it's identical. It's not just a human person saying the same word over and over again live. So there's going to be the inevitable kind of variations and fluctuations in timbre, in phrasing, in pitch, all that kind of thing. But this is obviously it's literally just the same thing. It's it's binary. It's round and round and round. So then, at what point you stop thinking about the associations? You stop thinking about any kind of connections or context, politics, whatever, and actually just start hearing it just as sound. At what point do you stop listening to the actual words? And you start kind of focusing more on actually just any kind of musical content that you discern from it, and where and when that transition takes place. Does it take longer with certain kind of words or phrases? If they're more weighted down, does it take longer to kind of disassociate that? Does it not disassociate at all for some people? So there's kind of various questions in there that were interesting for me.
Absolutely. I think there we're probably going to have to wrap it up because we're running we're sort of running to time, but as usual, it's very tempting to chatter for ages, and it's lovely to have you with us. And there's been some wonderful comments coming in.
I'll hop on Facebook and I think that a couple of things came in, so I'll go and
if you don't mind.
No,
I'm
on
sure
the contrary.
people. There've been some things coming in. I mean, I've seen them. I mean, mainly the people being very complimentary, but I'm sure if people have got any questions they want to put in there, it'd be lovely if you could have a quick look. And,
absolutely, I shall be there in just a few moments.
Cool. Thank you very, very much, Steve.
Thanks again, guys. Thanks for the chance, Ed.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you. Right. So, wow, that brings us up towards our final piece of the evening coming up. Just before that, though, because it's very tempting to sort of run away and be overexcited at the end. Really should say thank you. I mean, first off to Ben, who's over there. I'll never get used to this mirroring. To Ben over there for valiantly agreeing to co-host and stepped in at the last minute. And you've done an astounding job as ever, sir.
Thank you.
So thank you very, very much for that.
Pleasure is mine.
Oh, it's great, Otherwise, it's kind of hard doing this by yourself. It really is. It's so much more fun with like friends, and we all know that everybody's out there, but it's nice to
just share the room.
People. Totally. As ever, thank you very much to all the performers and to Charles and to Rob, who are behind the scenes and work immensely to get this happening, and streaming and comments and all those things, and the idents and pushing buttons and generally helping us all keep a clue as to what's going on. We've got a natter that runs between us on Discord, and it's a combination of oh my goodness, who set a timer and all sorts of things. So thank you very much to the team, basically, and to all kind of friends and family and people who let us prat about and do this, and to people who come and watch it, which is really, really cool. Once again, if you do have a penny to spare and want to chip it in for us to help keep the lights on for this, if you want to go to coffee.com/oscilloscope, and if you have a spare penny, then great. If not, please don't worry. We are doing this because we want to do it. But it helps towards streaming costs and computers and all those things. So that's great. And thank you very much. Last, but certainly by no means least, we have a piece by David Daniel Hignall, I apologise. Which is he's a composer who is first time doing stuff with Oscilloscope, and it's a real pleasure to welcome him here. It's a modular piece using that sort of resource, which we've seen quite a bit of this evening, so it kind of fits really nicely, and also using electromagnetic signals, shortwave radio, and kind of exploring that sort of dialogue between distance and togetherness, really. So yeah, without further ado, Daniel Hignall, please stay on the end because we'll have a chat with him. And yeah, Daniel Hignall. Thank you very much, Daniel. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
That's a great word for it. That was impressive. Very impressive. Yeah. Strong piece.
It's one of those pieces you almost feel you need a second afterwards just to kind of come back down, you know.
Where to begin, Ed? Where to begin? Can I begin?
Yeah, by all means, please do.
I would love to. I call that high concept modular work. I thought, what a lovely way to see tonight through all the different ways you can approach the other performers, included the kind of gear you use. And I really loved how different your visuals were to the gear, how it worked, you know, how you used those soft transitions. But I'm going to tell you, the one thing that impressed me the most was your use of text. I thought that was fabulous. I thought the text style you used was amazing. The different, like how the opacity in some of the words were different. The text, now I've used text in work a lot, and it can make a little big difference, and it can change your piece in a massive way. Your text was perfect. It was perfect. The way, the choice of text and the words and everything. So huge congratulations from my point of view. I think that was a huge success to accomplish with such a hard thing to do. Text I find is difficult. So well done. And moving into that, you need to share some of the ideas behind that piece with us, because I think there's a lot going on in there, if you don't mind.
Yeah, there's a few different things at play, I suppose. I mean, my background is in using text for scores. So my PhD was looking at how you can use text to create scores, not just for music, but for various types of creative activity.
Amazing.
So that's always tied into what I do at one level or another.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, it's super good. Yeah, go on, sorry.
In this work in particular, so I've spent the last year, I suppose, working on a fairly large piece that looks at ways of sort of scoring dense kind of timbral machinations upon synthesizers, drawing upon a lot of sonorism, people like Krzysztof Penderecki, those kind of sort of big Polish sonorist composers. So this was very much a way of exploring this research I've been doing and saying, okay, well, I've theorized how this might be possible. I've talked about different ways of doing it. Let's now try that in a live setting. Can I do a 10, 15-minute piece where I'm drawing upon this research to actually go, okay, here's some dense timbral stuff that kind of meets my research, if you will.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, it's the themes behind it. Can you share a bit more? Is there like, because it feels like there's ideas behind the actual. There's a message in there. I feel there's some messages in there, and pardon me, but I need them explained.
I mean, I think I find it very hard not to be topical, not to kind of engage with the world around me in some way. I think we all do to one level or another. And I've become quite excited by, I mean, again, distance is something that has been a part of my practice for, 10 years or so. I perform under the name Distant Animals. I'm interested in that kind of dynamic between, performers and people and communities. And that's something that's been amplified, 1,000 times over with the current situation we're living in. Distance has suddenly become something quite precious, something quite volatile. And that becomes very interesting to me. And I think I was exploring this notion of distance as I've been using it for a number of years. So the text there is Jacques Rancière. That's a piece he wrote about the value of distance, I suppose, or the creative capacity of distance. So I was kind of revisiting that idea, which I'd worked with a lot. And I guess I've been thinking, again, probably like a lot of people, quite negatively, quite it's hard to feel positive about the world at the moment for a whole number of reasons. But something we perhaps can be positive about is the fact that distance is clearly increasingly important. How we function with distance, how we work as a community across distance is important. And actually that's perhaps something that artists and people who work with electricity are used to doing. It's something they're specialists in. So perhaps we can kind of use that as an opportunity to say, okay, we have some skills to navigate this problem and perhaps deal with it in a positive way.
Excellent.
That's intriguing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was wondering as well, as you're doing, and as you were explaining things there, you've got this text which works brilliantly and provides something of a sort of a framework for what you're doing. And then you're talking about these textures that are going with it and augmenting it. How are you actually thinking about developing those textures? I mean, obviously you've got the modular stuff there, but I mean, what do you actually have in mind when you're creating it? Because there's very obviously this sort of quite long arc of what's going on. But I mean, yeah, could you explain the thought process of actually making those sounds and how you come to the conclusions you do?
In this piece, it was fairly organic. You know, I knew the kind of musical language I wanted to use, this stuff with ensemble density, etc. But really, I had the concept of wanting to work with distance. So the first incarnation of this piece, when I first had the idea and started playing around with it, I was just going to get a shortwave radio and attempt and fail to speak to someone else on it. I thought that might be quite interesting just to watch someone use what is essentially an audio device to fail to communicate with the outside world. But I stood back from that on the grounds that it probably would have been quite boring for everybody else just to watch me fiddle with a radio for 15 minutes. But that developed into this using the electromagnetic field scanner to kind of say, well, okay, how can I play with the physical distance of my instrument? What does that mean for my tonal variety, the kind of sounds it's possible to make based upon what I'm doing to the machine that's not actually playing it per se. So there's quite a little, there's very little going on where I'm playing it in any traditional sense. There's very little sound generators being used from the modular. It's largely just this frequency scanner interacting with these electrical devices. Largely their LED lights are probably causing more sound than anything else.
Incredible, because the sound fit so well, and it also gave, unlike the sort of where you could lead into, and not necessarily negative, but just dystopian or a little, I didn't feel any negative connotation to what was going on. It felt quite uplifting, and that's what a great sort of lucky chance, maybe, or maybe you knew it was going to sound that way when you did your experiments, but it fits really well anyway with the text. I felt it fit really. Thematically, it's all very strong, definitely. Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, no, thank you. It's really good.
Yeah, no, it's a really intriguing piece, and I think it'd actually be nice to be able to watch it back again, kind of properly. It's really difficult doing this as this sort of thing, because you kind of go, I've got to be able to be articulate and pay attention to this and realise how long things are and whatnot. And yeah, it's quite nice to actually have things that you can kind of want to then go back and go, yeah, once is the week, let's rewind this and actually watch it as purely for watching it, which is really quite cool. Yeah, there's some really interesting comments coming in from people. I mean, there's generally very, very, almost unanimously positive. Anybody got any questions as well that they want to ask or put forward, then by all means, please do so. Because they don't appear to be popping up there at the moment. I think there's some stunned silence, which is quite nice.
Sorry to interrupt, but did you say this was your first time on Oscilloscope?
Yes.
Reading piece. Okay. Well, I'm fascinated with your work just from that one piece. So I do hope you make a return with something, because I think certainly everyone has their skills, and you don't get a text guy in the mix too much. So, definitely, I think, and that's sort of coming off the comments too, is like your piece was well received and welcome. So I hope you come back with some more sometime.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, it'd be great. And it's lovely to actually finally sort of virtually meet you face to face. We've been in touch over email an awful lot. And then, yeah, it's actually first time digitally meeting right here and now. So yeah, it's great to finally meet you. So thank you for that. And as I would say to yourself and to Ben and to all the other performers, we've got a Zoom chat set up for people afterwards as some sort of green room for us lot, so we can all have a natter with each other and whatnot. So if anybody does want to grab a beer and have a natter as performers, then by all means please do so. And yeah, and there's a link to Daniel's work down there. So if anybody wants to go and have a listen, and based on that, I'm thinking quite a few people will want to. Thank you very, very much. And yeah, thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So that brings us to the end of tonight. Ben, as ever, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Ed. I love it. Been a great show.
It's been very enjoyable, and it's been, as ever with these things, quite a few different strands that sort of seem to go through things. I don't know whether that's purely based on the stats of put enough things with enough complexity together and we'll notice some sort of common thread. I'm not sure, but it's really lovely how things kind of work and have a flow. So it's intriguing. Geek Out Modular Fest night ? No, there were some very strong non-modular pieces in there, I would hasten to add. But yes, definitely majoritively modular, which is quite nice. It's not modular tends to be one of those instruments that doesn't tend to get associated that much with sort of far out experimental stuff. You know, we kind of usually think of it as quite a four to the floor at times, which I think this evening we've shown, yeah, it's not always.
Absolutely, yeah. I think this evening we showed a huge breadth of what performance with that equipment can do. So that was really enjoyable for me. I don't use modular, so to see the variety is very good. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really quite nice because it's almost become synonymous with things for a stage, and it's really intriguing seeing the diversity of what you can do with apparently similar tools, even though superficially they may be, deep down quite often they're not, and indeed what you can do with them. But that's by the by. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us, performers and artists and composers. Please do come over and join us on Zoom in a second. I will open that up. Everybody out there, thank you very, very much for listening. If you've missed any of it, you want to catch up, please do click on Facebook or indeed on YouTube. Thank you for coming. Hope to see you next month. Yep, there's the link for coffee.com if you do want to chip in anything. It popped up. Thank you very much. Take care, especially if you're one of those people that's been locked down again. See you all next month. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.